Welcome to the Passion Behind the Art show. It's all about diving in with individuals to learn the story behind their passion. It's your host, Daryl Pena.
What's up? Guess what? It's another week, another amazing guest, and another opportunity for me to bring you value through someone else's story. But before we jump into this week's episode, I just want to let you know that our Patreon page is up and running, finally. And if you're not familiar with Patreon, it's basically a way to support a specific endeavor that you're interested in. And of course, the endeavor that we're talking about right now is Passion Behind the Art, the podcast. So I'd really appreciate it if you would support the podcast through our Patreon page. All you need to do is just go to passionbehindtheart.com and look for the Patreon tab, and it will take you directly to the page. This would mean the world to me and everything that I'm doing in regards to the podcast. A large percentage of what I do in regards to the podcast, as a matter of fact, all of it is free. And I would really appreciate you if you could just help support the podcast with as low as $2. Nothing too crazy, $2. And of course, there's various tiers you can support with more, and the more you support, the more incentives you get. So just go to passionbehindtheart.com and check out our Patreon page. This would help me out a lot. There will also be a link in the show notes. So without further ado, let's jump into this week's episode.
We're live, and it's the Passion Behind the Art show, and it's your boy, Daryl Pena. And we're getting ready to have two lovely ladies on to talk about, licensing. And a lot of the stuff that you see in like Target, even Walmart, specialty greeting cards, like someone creates the artwork for those stuff, and a lot of times they license it. And this is basically, we're going to talk about how do you do that and how do you make that happen. So, Ilana, just kind of give people a brief, like a little quick who you are. And
yeah. So I'm Ilana Griffo, and I am a hand lettering artist and surface designer, and most of my work now is through art licensing. And I have a book. I don't know, did I say I'm an author? So I have a book, Mind Your Business, which is a creative workbook for entrepreneurs and people who have a creative passion. And so what Katie and I found is that people, when we say art licensing, people have no idea what we're talking about most of the time. And then when we explain it, artists are like, I want to do that. And so we thought it would be a good idea to put our heads together and create a course about art licensing, specifically for lettering artists, because that's sort of how the industry we know the best. But it works great for people who are illustrators as well. And so, we have like a couple, I'm sure, I don't know if you have questions for us, but we have like 5 sort of things you should know about licensing, if that works.
Yeah, that works. Go for it. And I'll just piggyback off you.
Yeah, sure. So basically, art licensing is when someone sort of borrows your artwork. And so it's sort of like leasing your artwork to someone, and they can put it on a product. So if you go into a store like Target or Michael's or something like that, and you see really beautiful artwork on a gift bag or a greeting card, a lot of the times that is not done in-house. It's done by just a regular artist. And so that is licensing, is when you get a percentage of they're borrowing it. So the payment can be a lot of different ways, and we'll talk about that too. So it's really cool. It's you can repurpose a piece over and over, and you can get paid for a piece over and over. And so we've really changed the structure of our business through art licensing, and so we really wanted to share that with other people so that they could also change how they're making money and making ends meet. And so our course sort of walks you through like everything you need to know about getting started with licensing. And what we've learned along the way through fumbles and through great success and through like tons of Googling. So we're excited to share that with people. And the course is closing tomorrow, but then we're going to open it up again later this year.
All right, sweet. So one of the cool things about licensing is and we talked briefly about this during the 100th episode, the whole idea of not exactly trading time for money. And I think that's probably one of the beneficial things of licensing your work. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, the cool thing about art licensing is that you can get paid over and over and over and over for one piece. And so if that piece takes you 3 hours, you could get paid for like 10 years on that same piece, through like thousands and thousands of not thousands of different actual pieces of product, but it could be on 3 different types of product. It could be on a greeting card. It could be on a gift bag. It could be on wrapping paper, and you could get paid again and again. And so it really is pricing is really tricky for licensing, but we do have some resources that have been really handy for us, and we share a lot about that in the course. But yeah, I think it's not just about time. It's like the years it takes you to grow that skill really kind of factor in, and like value-based pricing too is like how long did this take you, and how much is it worth based on like how complex it is, and the final usage, like all of those things. Like I always say, pricing is a sliding scale, so like all of those things are a factor.
Okay, cool. So what's you want to go over the list that you have, some of the top things?
Yeah, so the first one is just like what we've done is we have 5 things you need to know about our licensing. And the first one is, what is it? And I talked about that briefly, but basically it's renting out your artwork and letting someone use it, giving them a license to use it for X amount of years, time, territory, things like that.
Cool. Well, everyone, this is Katie Johnson, and she's the other half of this awesome course about licensing your artwork. Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself and some of the stuff that you have to share.
Yeah, I am a lettering artist, and I run a freelance studio and a paper goods shop called Katie Made That. The name is flexible, so I can end up doing kind of whatever I want in the future. I could make pasta and it would still work. Katie Made That pasta, which isn't too far off from what I would enjoy. But yeah, I live in Austin, Texas, and now I do a lot of art licensing work. Ilana and I hooked up on Instagram. I made a post about planning on doing an art licensing class, and she was like, oh, I was thinking of doing that. And then we teamed up that way, which was really cool. And we've actually never met in person, because we live on opposite sides of the country. So that's pretty fun, the magic of the internet.
Yep. And yeah, you guys are literally on the other side of the country.
Yeah, she's up in upstate New York, where my parents met and fell in love, actually.
Wow, nice. I used to live in New York.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. All right, so what made you want to start this in the beginning?
Art licensing or the course itself?
The course itself.
The course was because I was getting DMs like all the time from people who knew that I do art licensing, and they were like, how do I price this? How do I handle this? What's this client like? Or like, how should I respond to this email? And I just realized, in addition to like initially doing research on my own and like finding little to nothing out there, that people just don't know much about licensing, and that the info out there is just so sparse. And it's really like a closed door industry. It's like kind of secretive, weirdly. And they do things in a lot of like old school ways. So I just saw that there was a real gap in the information that's out there, and we wanted to fill that for people.
Interesting. Now that you say it is pretty old school how the process is done. It's still, a lot of it is still pretty analog.
Yeah, and well, especially when you kind of get deeper into it and start to meet the people that like go to trade shows and how all those deals are done, and like the world of agents and stuff like that, and just how similar a lot of the work starts to look as well. Like they kind of have like this thing that works in licensing, and it hasn't really had like any like disruption in a while. So I think there's a big opportunity for letterers to come in who like really specialize in making beautiful, readable copy and just like elevate products to another level that hasn't really fully been explored, because so many of the people that are in art licensing now are illustrators specifically, and they are amazing at what they do, but they aren't trained in like lettering specifically.
Right.
And copy is so important for products. So I think there's a really interesting like gap there, an opportunity for lettering artists to really start to like show up in licensing.
Interesting. And so, in like, so I go to like Hobby Lobby and you see like these stuff. Is that maybe like some of the stuff that has the lettering on it? Is that possibly art licensing?
Yeah, it almost certainly is. I actually don't know what their like in-house design situation is like, but I do know that they do a lot of licensing. So they have like agencies that they go to consistently. They probably have buyers that will like go to trade shows and things like that. So yeah, there's somebody's job at Hobby Lobby who is the art buyer or the art director, whose job it is to like scout all the pieces for like their greeting cards and like papers that they have, like specialty papers and like house goods. And it gets really confusing too, because there can be like companies that sell to other companies that then sell to Hobby Lobby. So it can get like weird and layered with like you're pitching to company A and then company A buys your work to then go pitch it to Hobby Lobby. And sometimes that's how it gets bought.
Got you.
It can get really convoluted.
That's interesting. So who are some of like the companies that you've licensed work with, or if you can share that?
Yeah, well, I have done a lot of work for those kind of like A companies that then license to other places, and sometimes I don't even know where my work ends up. Like that's an interesting part about licensing. You have to be kind of like detached from your work sometimes. But I don't know if I can say who I just did a project with, so I'm not going to say. But I've done some work with Sellers Publishing, which is a name you might know. I did a full line of cards, 36 cards for a brand called Cardthartic. I've done some stuff for Design Greetings. Mostly my stuff is focused on cards and like gift bags and giftable items, where Ilana's like expanded a little bit more from that. But that's been mostly my focus, or at least what people have seemed to do with what people have done with my work.
Okay, cool. It's funny, like some of those cards and the companies that you've mentioned, I actually know some of them because I've been kind of nosy and just looking at the back of cards and just kind of researching, just to research to see like who's behind some of this stuff. So some of these names that you said, I am familiar with.
Yeah, no, that's a great way and a great suggestion too for how people can start to get into art licensing, or like know who to reach out to, is just literally go product hunting in a store and turn things around and take note of all that information and start your spreadsheet going. And obviously you don't want to just like reach out blindly to any company. You want to like research first, make sure it's a good fit, and like really do your homework. But that's a really good suggestion, and we talk about that in class actually. So nice. You're already on that.
Nice. That is pretty cool. So do you have an agent, or are you basically kind of just?
I actually just left my agent in good terms, very good terms, but like a couple of days ago. So it's like fresh. But yeah, I honestly have tried both ways, and I'm just gonna try to build things at my own pace, because one of the things that is one of our 5 things that we talk about actually is agents, like one of the 5 things we're going to cover. So that's a pretty good segue if you want me to segue into to agents, because a lot of people think that agent equals success, and that when you have an agent, you've like made it or something. And that's not necessarily the case. What you want an agent for is to help you manage the business side of things, to help you reach more clients, and to take some of that stuff off your plate. But there's, some disadvantages as well. Like, you have to give up a big chunk of your money, the sales that you make. And a lot of art licensing agents require a lot of submissions, like monthly submissions of portfolio pieces. And sometimes people just can't keep up. Like I just needed to go at my own pace and be able to build other things in my life. Because I just have a lot of irons in the fire. So that's definitely something to consider. So agent doesn't equal success. Agent equals help if you need it in certain areas, but you have to like weigh those things and see if it's right for you.
Right. That's cool. That's very interesting. So, when you say, how does the process go from, okay, your artwork is on a product, it's bought, and the money comes down through the agent? Is it like through the agent gets a percentage of that, or you get a percentage of that? Like, how does that work?
So the company is going to pay the agent directly. So everything gets filtered through your agent. And that's part of what makes it take, up to or sometimes at least 18 months to get paid. Because imagine you start working with a company, you make a product, they have to go through all of the rounds of revisions and prepping it. Then they have to create it. Then they have to get it on shelves. Then people have to buy it. Then they have to get the money and give it to your agent. And then your agent has to get the money and process it and give it to you. So when you think about all that, it's like, holy crap, this is not going to be an instant payday.
Process.
Yeah. So you definitely have to wait. And then your agent will just give you your chunk, what you're due, and they should just itemize everything and keep track of all that. That's what you pay them their chunk for, part of it.
So do you is there a known percentage of what the agent keeps versus
It's really typical to do up to 50% with art licensing, which is whoa for a lot of people, because I think in freelance editorial and advertising, it's more 15 to 30-ish. So 50 sounds really high, but it's standard across what I've heard, at least. So,
wow.
The last thing that we had on our list of 5 things about licensing is just talking about the mass market and the fact that when you're making these licensing pieces, you have to think about where they're going to end up. What do you even make? Where do you even start? So we start with traditional licensing. It starts with the mass market. So you want to play in the realm of things that are easily digestible for a wide array of people. So things that could sit on shelves at Target versus at a novelty store, like Spencer's or something. Does that still exist?
Not even sure.
I mean, you could license to Spencer's, but there are less Spencer's options than Target options. Right. So generally, where you start is with the mass market, and I specifically work within occasions. Typically, is what I think around, and I think that's a really good place to start for letters or illustrators who are interested in looking into art licensing. Is starting with occasions, and Christmas and birthday are so king. It's crazy.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I hope it's been super valuable to you, and you're now ready to take your audience building, your community growing to the next level, to help you and help me build our empire, for lack of a better word, or just to build our thing. Remember to stop by iTunes, Passion Behind the Art, and leave a review and subscribe. It's very important to me. It helps the podcast grow, and it makes me feel good to kind of hear from you guys, to know what you like about this podcast, what it's done for you. So jump on iTunes and subscribe and leave a review. Passion behind the art. Be blessed.